Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. Today we are talking about the Champion's Code. What makes you as a speaker great? And we're going to draw our lessons from maybe sports and speaking via my friend Ross Bernstein. Welcome, Ross.
Hey Jane, great to be with you.
I'm so excited to have you. I wanted to have you on the show for quite some time now. I'll talk about that in a second. But tell everybody about your background and what your business model looks like today.
Well, I first just want to reciprocate and say I'm very honored to be on your show. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I've been listening
Aw,
to your content for many years, so I feel very honored that I finally arrived when I get to
you
be on a
arrived.
Jane Atkinson podcast. So this is
That's awesome.
pretty cool for me. Sorry, in reference to your question, my background, I'm a speaker. I'm a sports author. I've written like 50 sports books, and I've been speaking since I wrote my first book when I was 21 years old. So I've been speaking ever since.
Oh my God.
And I kind of have a weird model, but I just kind of grind like you and just go, go, go. And yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Well, let's talk about your model. I want to share it with people. Um, Maybe it's not the one that I would say everybody should follow. It's probably not the one that we teach inside the Wealthy Speakers School, but that's okay because guess what? There might be something inside Ross's model that you can say, I'm going to take that and apply it to my business. Tell me what your business model is, and I'll do my best to maintain my composure.
Well, I speak, I keynote. That's it.
Yeah.
So it's just, I have groups of 10 and 10,000. So I just, the whole pick a lane thing never worked for me. So I just don't do that. But
But
I'm just,
but your thing when I come to your website is all about the Champions Code. And so are you saying that you speak on 10 other topics?
no, no, I really do. I do one topic. I have
That is
one.
picking Elaine Ross. I think we have a misunderstanding in terms of
Well, my audience is
branding.
they really vary
That's
from
okay.
all kinds of different clients. But
Yeah.
sure, yeah. So but I just don't do a lot of the extra stuff, I guess, that other speakers do. Um, but for me, yeah, I study sports and great teams, and I love as a journalist trying to figure out what it is that makes the great ones great, and I
Mm.
translate that to business. So I'm unique. I've spoken on all seven continents, and luckily, sports is a universal language that everyone speaks. Whether I'm talking rugby in New Zealand or cricket in South Africa, so it's very story driven, but a lot of life lessons about great coaches, a tie to leadership, and I talk about it's always a blend and a weave of things that happen in sports and how that translates to customer experience or how that translates to sales or being a different leader communicating more effectively with a young Gen Z or an older boomer or whatever that is. So
Okay.
yeah,
So
it's a
are you saying that your form of marketing is just to speak and get spit
yeah,
on?
that's
Okay.
it.
So we call that be good marketing, by the way. I mean, it's not a very, it's not a name that is, super sexy or anything, but that's what you're doing is you are the epitome of be good marketing. So you go out, you get a speech for 10,000 or you get a speech for 10 and they tell other people and you continue on. And that is why I saw your face everywhere during the pandemic because you were out speaking up a storm. And so I, I want to just give everybody a tip because I think this is an interesting little sidebar. You spoke at this Speaking Consulting Network. Is it Speaking Consulting Network? They're
Yeah,
a dental group of consultants.
yeah.
And you posted that on LinkedIn, as you have posted all of your audiences on LinkedIn and talked about what a great audience they were. And I went out on LinkedIn because I have this process on LinkedIn of just engaging with people in a meaningful way. And so I went out and commented on that post. I spoke for that group a few years ago and they were amazing, loved them. thinking that that's all I'm doing. I'm just continuing to keep my LinkedIn juice going. And sure enough, Lois comes back and says, "Oh, we should talk." And I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe she means in a few months or something like that. Well, we end up talking in the next few days and booking myself in to speak at the next one. So
Awesome.
I just wanted to say, funny story. Hey, when you get out and actually see what else is going on out there in the world and engage meaningfully on LinkedIn, it could end up resulting in business for you. And I think that's really cool. Tell me about I mean, clearly you have a social media strategy. I think you think you're a speaker with no strategy, but I mean, you post on social media on a very regular basis, Ross.
Well, it's funny. I'm the most non-social media person, and I don't have any friends on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on YouTube. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on. I just do LinkedIn, and I really don't engage. I use LinkedIn for three reasons and three reasons alone:
Okay.
to honor, acknowledge, and thank people. Typically, my clients. There
Yeah.
could be a humble brag. It could be me on a huge stage in Hong Kong or Sydney doing something really cool. But it's always the purpose of it is always to thank my client, to tell people like Lois Banta, who you connected with and at SCN, thank you. What a wonderful event. Great job to the planning team.
Yeah.
Just really to gush about them and to make them look good.
Yeah.
And as a result, really by the laws of karma, good things happen. So I wind up booking a lot of things from that. But I'm laser focused. I just try and do it on LinkedIn because I don't want Facebook to me is very dangerous. I don't like to go there. I don't want people talking about QAnon or Trump or Hillary or Biden or religion or vaccines. So I really just focus on LinkedIn, and I'm not really engaging. I might like a comment, but I'm not really one to respond. I'm not interested in it. I mean, this ties with my whole theory of being an outlier is that I don't really do any side hustles.
Yeah.
Like I don't podcast. I don't have an LMS. I don't blog. I don't vlog. I don't have a weekly video subscription.
Do you have
I
a
don't have a paid.
database, Ross? Do you
I
have a
don't have a paid mastermind. I don't do ClickFunnels, seminars, train the trainers, consulting, coaching. I don't have an email list. And Jane, I will tell you, I don't even have a CRM. That's true.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
rocking Microsoft Word.
You are what we call the accidental speaker.
Yeah.
That it's all working because it's working, but it's well, actually, I would say it's not necessarily accidental because you have made a very intended decision to do your business this way.
Yeah.
And that is great. That is great. It's not how we subscribe to do it. We do recommend that you have a database so that when your leads come in, so that you can track somebody who you spoke to 5 years ago and say, "Oh, you're coming back. This is great." And I think that you do better than you think you do. I'm going to give you more
No,
credit than you
I,
give yourself.
I built a lifestyle business very purposefully. So for me, the speaking leads to travel, which is what I do. I live on the road with my wife, our kid. My one of my favorite metrics is my kid became Delta Airlines' youngest diamond medallion at
Oh,
13.
that's cool.
So for me, it's really a lifestyle that the speaking
Yeah.
leads to, and that's very purposely what I like to do.
And so we call it the wealthy speaker mindset, the wealthy speaker lifestyle, and you are living it on your terms. And we have a lot of people on this show who do it on their own terms. So there is not one size fits all, people. Um, but you do understand based on some of your research. Okay, wait a second. Let's just back up for a second. 50 books? What? Like, hello. So I'm thinking that whatever you decide to do, you go all in and you're very committed to it. How in the world does one write 50 books? I've written, I think, five, and I'm exhausted from that. So talk about writing 10
Sure.
times that.
So I'll give you a little bit of my backstory because I have to explain a little bit to explain where it all came from. So I grew up in Minnesota. Good friends with several of your peeps like Ryan Estes and David Horsager and Sindra
Sit your
Kamphoff.
off,
Yeah.
yes.
So Sam Richter. So we're all buddies. Anyways, I grew up as a huge sports fan. I wound up trying out to play hockey. You're from Canada, so you know all
Yes.
about that. At the University of Minnesota, where it's like religion.
Yes.
And I lasted about 10 minutes. I wound up getting cut, and I became the team mascot, Goldie the Gopher. There's actually, for the video, there's my gopher head right there.
Okay.
I became a giant smelly rodent, and actually wound up writing a book about it as a senior in college. I gotten into so much trouble as a mischievous mascot that a publisher approached me and said they wanted to write a book about it. Apparently, as I like to say, it's not appropriate to throw Kraft cheese singles at the Wisconsin band. Who knew? Cheeseheads. But
Cheesehead. I get it.
I kind of spawned the idea, like, what if I wrote a book about the history of Gopher hockey from Goldie the Gopher's point of view? So I begged my parents to let me leverage my graduate school money. I had two big brothers that had gone on to get their Ivy League MBAs, and this is what they wanted me to do. And I said, I don't want to, this school thing isn't for me anymore. I want to work in sports. That's my passion. So I convinced them to let me write a book about the history of Gopher hockey, and I knew nothing about writing books or publishing books or reading books. If you saw my grades, I'm not kidding. But I dove in, and one of the first guys to help me was Herb Brooks, the coach of the fabled Miracle on Ice 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, who I had met as a 10-year-old in 1980 when I went to begged my parents to go to his hockey camp, and we'd connected, and I won the Most Improved award, by the way, for the guy who sucks the most at that camp. But Herb reached out to help me and introduce me to all these famous people, and that launched my career. And as a 21-year-old, I wrote a book called Gopher Hockey by the Hockey Gopher, and it became a cult bestseller. I think we did 5 or 6 printings, and I was doing, TV interviews, radio interviews, book signings at the Mall of America, and companies would call, Rotaries, chambers, but companies would say, wow, we saw you on TV telling stories, come talk to our company. And that was my first foray into writing and speaking. And since then, I just got in, and I would churn out 2-3 books a year. So for me, initially, writing a book wasn't a vanity play where it is for most speakers, where it's just something cool. I have a new book. For me, it was very simple. If I didn't write a book and sell a crap load of books, I didn't eat. That was my job. So I learned organically very early on about marketing and promoting, and so I did thousands of TV and radio interviews. I was really good at promoting my books and figuring out how to interview the athletes, and being at all the celebrity golf tournaments, building relationships, and even now being a member of the media where I have access. So I'm able to be in the press box and the dugout and the sideline and at Monday Night Football. And this week I was at the U.S. Open in New York. So I'm constantly studying.
So exciting! We had a Canadian in the fight.
Two of them. Yeah. I know. I know. It was really cool. So, so for me, I've always been very passionate about sports and making it part of my lifestyle. But writing. So now but honestly, Jane, I'm not interested in books anymore. I'm done with that world. I don't really care about it. Books now they're lost leaders. They lead to more speeches. I give them away. I've already done the whole bestseller thing. Look at me, Mom. I don't care. It's now it's more about shifting my content to be able to speak and to help my clients to be better. So that's kind of my weird, crazy backstory.
I love that weird, crazy backstory. And it is so fun, and there's just so much to it. So during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, talk us through what was going on in your head and what you did to kind of shift into high gear. It seemed to me like you never took your foot off the gas pedal once.
Well, I mean, thank you. I've always done about 120 keynotes per year, pretty consistently. And certainly that, March 18th, whenever we all have our last in-person event where we were like, oh, I remember that day. I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, my calendar emptied like everyone else's. And I was like, this is not going to be good. So, I had a pity party for a couple weeks. And then I remember, I bought this thing called Zoom. I had no idea what it was. I didn't know how to turn it on. I literally
used it yet?
never used it. I'm not a webinar guy, so I was never into doing that kind of stuff. So I bought it and immediately shifted. And one of the things I did early on was, as you can see for your people your listeners on YouTube, is I set up a separate television next to me, which allowed me to deliver a live virtual keynote as opposed to a webinar where you see my fat head and my slides. That was a massive differentiation early on. And I mean, I've probably done 150 virtuals since that moment in that time. And, I recently had the CEO of a major, Fortune 50 financial services company just say that's the first time they didn't check their phone in 90 minutes on a virtual. So that was a really good compliment. He was able to bring good energy and deliver it in a way that was, because you're really lucky to get 20% of people's attention on a virtual. It's just the nature of the beast. So that allowed me to do that. So I transitioned, but honestly, early on, and really the way you and I had originally kind of reconnected, Jane, was you had commented on one of my posts where I was speaking live that summer, and I was one of the first to sort of be live.
Yes, you were one of the very early people back, and I was very curious to know, like, how did that feel? What was it like? What was the audience like? Were people nervous? And you kind of walked me through that.
Well, I think what was key about it, and really because I wanted to keep traveling, I wanted to keep going. I didn't want to slow down. So I was convincing my clients to do events. I was telling, look, we can do this. Planners were nervous. They didn't know what they didn't know. But I said, look, if we do this responsibly, if we can be outside, if we can have ventilation, wear masks, we can do this so people can still get together because that's what people want. So very early on in June, July, I was traveling throughout the pandemic. And I had many clients in California where obviously there were much different opinions in blue states, red states. It was very different. But I had events where I was convincing planners to do. I had an event in a vineyard outside of Santa Barbara. I had one on a rooftop in Tiburon overlooking San Francisco with a big autonomous vehicle company. I had one in a redwood forest outside of Sacramento. So I was just going, and I didn't want to, so we've been, even this year, I've probably been in 60 cities. So, I love traveling. I'm very passionate about it, but I wanted to keep going. And I think to be able to help planners, help the clients who book us as speakers, to convince them and say, look, we can do this, help them imagine what it will look like. And that was really big, to keep events on the calendar, because honestly, it's heartbreaking, as all of your listeners know, to book gig and then to lose the gig and have it rescheduled and yada, yada. So that was big for me. And then one more thing I'll add that I will say that I did that was really important during the pandemic was I created a mastermind, and I didn't monetize it. It was free. It was just me, but I probably had 50 of my closest speaker friends who are very high level people. All of them. And I hosted every Monday, and it became like this spiritual thing for all of us, where for a couple hours, people would come on and just share, how you doing? Like, tell me and I was the moderator. So I just made sure that everybody got the conch and could speak, and it wasn't mine. It wasn't, but we're still doing it. It was fun. And like you have a community, and you have your tribe, and you're a giver, you help people. So for me, I wanted to do that. And it was really profound.
Well, as we kind of are approaching, and I'm not sure when this will run, probably in September, as we are approaching kind of the fourth wave, the Delta variant, we've really, in my community, shifted to how do we see this differently than we saw it the first time in March of 2020, and we're looking at it as opportunity. Okay, you're gonna get some of your events bumped out into the future. What are we going to do? Let's plan for it. Let's make sure we have a smorgasbord of options for our clients, and what can we do right now to really help and serve you. And we know that they know what they're doing now, and we know that we know what we're doing now, so we can do some virtual things in between. And have you, what percentage of your stuff right now is virtual, and what percentage is in person?
I'd say it's 70-30 in person, but I'm still doing a lot of virtual. So it's weird. I've just had some big events with like Medtronic and BMO, Wealth Management, and CUNA, the credit union network. And a lot of them, they're just too big. The events, they can't, because really the biggest in person I've had so far is about 800. Although I'll be in Orlando next week for a group of 1,500. Okay. So it is, they are getting, but I mean, a lot of the tip of the spear speakers that are only giant main stage speakers, they suffered the hardest. So I'm lucky, and then I'm diversified, is that I have a lot of groups that are, 50, 100, 200, whatever. Those are happening. Those are doable for planners can do those.
Yeah.
But the real big ones with an international contingent, certainly Canada, where where you're at. If there's a lot of sponsors that they're not, for liability reasons, they don't, they don't want to put their people on a plane or whatever. So it's still that part of it. They're still going virtual.
I don't see Canada doing much in the next little while. So we're still virtual. So, okay, very interesting. If somebody comes up to you and says, wow, Ross, you speak so much, what's your secret? What do you tell them?
Thanks.
Is it that I just speak and then I get referred? Like, is the
Yeah, I mean,
literally the referral part your
yeah,
main,
yeah.
the
I mean, I
like your
definitely have
success?
I definitely have a referral process. I love referring events to guys like Ryan Estes and Dave Horshauger, and they're incredibly generous with me as well. And so that's a huge part of it. But yeah, it's like just do a great job on stage rather than wasting time focusing on things that don't, that are, they just don't produce revenue. I'd rather I'm old school. I pick up the phone. I make lots of phone calls, and I'm constantly reaching out and trying to help my clients. And to be honest, I don't have a lot of fee integrity. That's something that's a big no-no in our world to talk about. But if
Mhm.
there's value, if there's a client, if it's a look, if it's a charity, if it's a nonprofit, if it's a Rotary, if it's a chamber, I'm there. If I can fit it in, I'm not going to charge them. And even if it's a client that has low fee, if there's value in it, if I'm available, I'll do it. I don't care. There's a lot of ways to get to seven figures, Jane, and my
Mhm.
path was very unorthodox, but I don't care.
Yeah.
So that's just never been my thing. So if there's a good group and I can do it, or if I can barter or do a cool experience, if it's in a great country that I want to go to and I can bring my wife and kid, I'm there. So for me, that's more important. And a lot of people don't want to say that or admit that. And I'm like, well, you do you, I'll do me. And that's just how I
Yeah.
do it.
Okay. Well, I like that you say it and that you own it and that you're happy with the lifestyle that you've created for yourself, and more power to you. It we, like I've said a million times on this show, there is not one way to go. There is not one path to success, and we are sharing them all with you. So, do I want all my clients to have their fees all over the place? Probably not, but I think that it's great that this is
You have to qualify that.
yeah.
You really do. If it's I travel nonstop. So if there's a client that wants me and they don't have my full fee, that's okay. Let's talk about your event. Let's talk about if there's value. Let's talk about who's going to be there. And let's talk about where you're willing to negotiate and where I'm willing to negotiate. I'm willing to negotiate on fee if you're willing to negotiate on my timing. If I can get to my, or maybe that's a day where I can't be anywhere else or I can't do anything. Or you know what? Even during the pandemic, you know what? I know your budget was decimated. Tell you what, I'm going to do your virtual this year for free. It's gratis at my expense. But you know what? Next year, it's going to be 20 because I'm coming in person next year. So I'm willing to do that to keep things on the calendar. And that's why, I was really, really, really busy this year. And and that led up. Now I'm really, really busy this year and next year, 22, 23. A lot of speakers that took their foot off the gas, they were okay during the pandemic, but this year their calendar is dead.
Mm.
So each gig leads to the next gig, and if that's not the case, I'll give you an example. Chart, Council of Hospitality and Restaurant Trainers,
Yeah.
amazing group. I've done a few of those. They don't pay very well. They have a very, very, very small budget. Anyone that tells you that's done that event that tells you they don't negotiate their fee is a liar. Okay, because they just don't pay that much.
Yeah.
But I did their event, I don't know, 5 years ago. It was a closing keynote. And I said, yeah, someone had recommended me. I said, of course, it'd be great, great audience. I booked 14 events from that event, and they were huge clients: Drury Hotels, Little Caesars Pizza, Smash Burger, Buffalo Wild Wings, right? And those led to like a ton of events, and you know what I mean? And so on and so on and so on. So you have to find value in being in front of the right audience. And if that means compromising your fee, there has to be value in other ways. So for
Those
me,
are
I just find
showcases.
value.
Those are showcases for sure, Ross. I
Yeah.
totally get that. I think you might have helped my client Annie Meehan get into chart, and
Love Annie.
that's going to be amazing for her. And those are her people. I mean, that makes really,
Yeah.
really good
Yeah. She used to be a
sense.
franchisee. Absolutely.
That makes really, really good sense for her to do that. So fantastic. Well, okay, so talking about the Champions Code here today, I don't know if we're going to need to retitle this podcast, um, because I really like that we've observed that you have a really different path, and that is just perfect. Let's go to what all-star athletes do that speakers might be able to learn from. We've got four things that we want to cover. What are the four things that athletes do that we can adopt as speakers?
Well, there's a million cliched things that you can do. Certainly, the four that I guess that you and I had talked about, or the that I wanted to focus on, were just really hard work and grinding. There's no substitute for that. I mean, you will beat skill. So, when you get to become a professional athlete, everyone's amazing. So certainly work ethic, and in our world, translating that to picking up the phone and smiling and dialing and just, grinding. There's really, that's the thing in sports. There's not a bigger
You
compliment to
live
be called.
that.
Yeah, you have to be a grinder. You've got to just go, and you've got to be resilient. You're gonna have to deal with a lot of rejection. If you're
Yeah.
in sales, you're dealing with a crap ton of rejection every day. And when I talk about guys like Tom Brady, I think Tom's greatest attribute is his short-term memory. You throw an interception, forget about it. You have a bad play, a bad series, a bad game, a bad week. It's the long-term consistent routine that athletes do. They lead a very boring life. People think they're rock stars, but it's very regimented. They wake up, they work out, they eat, they sleep, they watch film, they train. I talk about guys like Tom Brady, how he's got 9 coaches, a breathing coach, a mental health coach, a neurologist to help him understand the science of peripheral vision and reflexes, a yoga coach, a cupping coach, a Pilates reformer coach. I mean, there's, it's like like you, Jane, you're a coach, and like, if you want to be a really great speaker, you've got to align yourself with the right people. So, but I'll explain so here's what the Champions Code is. Let me just take a step back. I'm not trying to shill books here, but it's based on this research. I spent like 6 years where I wrote the 2 series of best-selling books about why winning teams win.
Okay.
And so the Champions Code, the first part of it is a series of books I wrote called Raising Stanley, Raising Lombardi. There's a few of these, and it was about what it took to hoist that trophy. I interviewed over 1,000 professional athletes and coaches, like Jim Collins did in Good to Great, to figure out the trends and the metrics and patterns about what it took, the chemistry, the culture, the coach, what adversity they went through. So that's what it takes to become a champion. I really want to know why. And the code part is really interesting. That's based in a series of books called The Code, about the unwritten, unspoken rules in sports. There's a fine line between cheating and gamesmanship in sports and business and life. And I kind of challenge people to think about their moral compass and about winning with integrity. I mean, if you cheat in sports, there's consequences. And this is what leads to getting drilled in baseball, or getting losing teeth in hockey, as being a good Canadian. So this book got turned into a movie with an Academy Award-winning director, which is really cool. But it's so the Champions Code is about winning the right way. And that's what my program is really all about. So I study the DNA of champions, and I translate that to business. So it's very unique. I'm in a very small category of people that do what I do, but it's my life's passion. It's what I really enjoy doing and I love. And so my audiences are very random and weird. But when I'm in China, I have to laser focus and study and learn. These are the greatest athletes and coaches in China, and I'm talking about them. And I have to, if I'm in South Africa, I'm only talking about them. And if I'm at an event in Mississauga or Moose Jaw or Medicine Hat, I'm talking about great hockey players, whoever came from there, because people they connect with sports that way.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
for me, that's what it's about. That's kind of what I do. And, I can do it virtually, or I can do it wherever, but when like Ryan Estes talking about, he's no longer a speaker, he's an expert. And I love that. So for me, that's my expertise.
So, the whole work ethic philosophy, clearly, you write 50 books, you know something about work ethic, but you also do it in your own physical life. Didn't you just run a marathon? How many marathons have you run?
I ran my 10th marathon yesterday, and I had a very hard time walking down the stairs to get into my office here in my
Oh,
worldwide
I
headquarters. But I was listening. I was listening to you on some of your podcasts as you were
yay!
for
So I'm gonna say I
four
ran a
hours and
marathon.
39 minutes later. I got in a few of them, so it was fun.
Oh, I ran a marathon with Ross yesterday. I'm so proud of myself. So the 10th marathon, I mean, what it takes to train for those, and that just tells us that you're actually really walking this work ethic talk. And it's so clear to me that you are someone who has very focused hustle. Focused hustle was
I
a
like that.
line that Ryan and I talked about. So let's talk about the next one. We've got work ethic. What's next?
I talked about. I can't remember my list. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'll give you the list. I'll give you the list. We've got work ethic, mental toughness,
Yeah,
consistency, and being an outliner. So let's go
yeah.
to mental toughness
Yeah,
next.
I just think like what you talked about when the pandemic hit, like everyone was just so woe is me, like, oh my God,
Mhm.
like I'm dead, I'm done, I can't do anything. And I'll tell you what, there were a lot of older speakers, um, a lot of CPAEs, who kind of just sort of hung it up. They were like, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to go virtual. I don't want to, you know what I mean? They were, the same thing had happened after, 9/11 and oh 08, oh
Mm,
09. And a lot of them just kind of like, you know what, I'm not going to ride this out.
no,
So
I'm finished.
I think that mental toughness was really saying, you know what, there's going to be bad stuff that happens. This is the first pandemic. And really, quite honestly, we shouldn't be too happy. I don't know what's going to happen with the epsilon variant or the mu or nu or omicron variant that are coming, because
Right.
the virus is going to keep going until we're vaccinated, and clearly there's a third of the population that doesn't want to get vaccinated, so this is going to be a challenge. The next variant, Jane, may not work with the Pfizer or the Moderna or the J&J, and that's horrifying to think about, and I certainly don't want to create panic, but as you prepare, we need to all be thinking about these things.
But what we do know, though, and I agree with you that there's so much uncertainty, and so I think we have to latch on to the things that we do know in order to keep our thoughts
Yeah.
somewhere that are helpful. Because if the thought is, oh, I don't know what's coming down the pike, you are going to operate from that place, and that is going to be a place of fear. Whereas you decided after your 2 weeks of woe is me, or however long that was, I had 2 weeks. Um, then you decided that people needed you now, and you went out and you made it happen, and you did 150 virtual. Like, hello. So mental toughness is something that you're also walking this talk, Ross. And I just think that um, you're an excellent example of somebody who
Thanks.
did that through the
Well,
pandemic.
likewise, I mean, no one grinds harder than Jane Atkinson. So you have
You
really,
think I grind hard, but I actually don't feel that way at all.
well, you make it look very seamless. So you do, and you're very successful because you treat people right and you provide great value. Your customers love you because you're so good at what you do and you help them. So I will
Thank
definitely,
you.
kudos to you. But I
Thank
think
you.
mental toughness, just it's from sports, it's dealing with the adversity and certainly focusing on the positives. I mean, like you know, I'll I have been on the road for the last several months. I'll be on the road. I'm off in another 10 cities swing here shortly, but I have been losing more gigs. I've lost about a dozen in the last several weeks, and some of them are heartbreaking. I lost one in a couple weeks ago, and this timing wise, it was in Lake Tahoe. And in the same week, I had another one down in Alabama,
Mm.
both because not of COVID, but because of forest fires and a hurricane. So
Oh,
it's like if but I've had other clients that had big events, and this is what they said that was, again, not the sky is falling, but just to be prepared, is, you know what, we had to cancel because of COVID, and we asked our team, what do you want to do, and they said, we don't want to do Zoom anymore. We can't do it.
mm.
That to me is a scary leading economic indicator. Hopefully not a harbinger of things to come,
Yeah.
but it is out there. And so that's scary. If they want to reschedule, oh fine. If I want to put it in 2022, 2023, fine, move it. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that another differentiator for me is I'm very easy to work with. My contract is 3 sentences. I have zero language about force majeure, nothing. If a client cancels on me, that's fine. And when the pandemic hit, I wrote a lot of checks back. I sent them back because I felt like it was the right thing to do. And they all rehired me because they were appreciative of it. But I will tell you that if a client cancels an event, as all your listeners know, it's heartbreaking. You lose money, you lose dates. It could have been other dates that were going to book that day. But mental toughness is saying, you know what? You just keep grinding, just keep going.
Writing those checks, you might call it karma or you might call it your code of ethics. I just think that, Ross, you have a way of doing business about you, which is why you maintain this level of busyness that
Thanks.
comes down to being a good guy. It comes down to being a good guy. Okay, the next one on our list is consistency. And you may not be doing all the things that other people are doing consistently, but what you are doing, you're doing it often. How often are you getting on the phone with people? How
Oh,
often are you making phone
I,
calls?
I make phone calls every day, as many as humanly possible. And so some of the big disruptions for me in my world are, robocalls because they've caused people to never answer their phone. And I'm a caller. The call block ID doesn't work as well because people won't answer their phones now. Young millennial meeting planners don't even, they want to
Oh,
text. So
they'd rather like text over the
yeah, so
contract.
you got to learn how to speak that language
Yeah.
on LinkedIn or on, but you look at your podcast list, there's a podcast every week. It's consistency. Most podcasters fizzle out after, 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, but you go. And for me, it's like my LinkedIn posts, man. Every event there I am. And when I see people, they go, man, you're everywhere. Good. That means it's working. It means that's what I want to be known for. Like, oh, that's Ross. He's just working. He's just grinding.
He's present. He's going to
he's
be
in
top of
Orlando.
mind.
He's in Vancouver. He's in
Yeah.
Chicago. Good. That means, because I'm not trying to market or I'm not salesy at all. When I work with clients, I have nothing to sell, but I want them to know that I'm busy, I'm working, and hopefully one leads to the next. And you, for me, that's sales. That's meeting planners. I'm not on LinkedIn trying to entertain my friends. I just want CEOs and planners to go, oh, that guy's really busy. We should probably look at him, just again. But again, consistency. And I want to go back too, Jane, just when we talked about mental toughness, when the pandemic hit, I will also say that one of the biggest things I did was the first time in a decade and a half that I was off the road. So I lost like 50 pounds and I started running hardcore again. And I hadn't run a marathon in like 10 years. And I was able to get to the point where so I ran a marathon last year, and this year was like I'm back. Right. So but for me, just like being on the road, healthy mind, healthy body, like you have to do that. It's a workout getting on planes and trying to eat right when you go first class lounge, Delta Sky Lounge, hotel. I mean, it's a cycle, and you got to take care of yourself.
And you are the product. If
Right.
the product breaks down, you
Yeah.
have nothing to sell. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's really important that you're doing it. Okay, real quick, let's wrap up with being an outlier. You're already kind of showing us what being an outlier in this industry looks like. What do you mean by being an outlier? How can I
Well,
say it?
I'll tell you a couple quick things. I focus a lot on philanthropy. I've got a 501c3. I created the Herb Brooks Foundation, which I donate proceeds from all my books and speeches to. Herbie we became dear friends, and he asked me to write his book. So everything I do is tied to charity and philanthropy. So that's a huge part of my brand. Doing weird stuff like this, Jane. I want you to know I had a man crush on Wayne. I had full-blown stage 5 man crush. Weird books like that tie into business and sports. So like picking topics and then not being afraid to do like really weird stuff like this, which was really fun. And then not being able to fail, where you do a sequel about this.
People can't see them, so we need
Oh,
to say
sorry.
the book titles.
So I'm sorry. Yes. So I wrote about. Sorry, you're right. So
Podcast, Ross. Podcast.
I wrote a book called "I Love Brett Favre, I Hate Brett Favre," and then a sequel called "I Love Sarah Palin, I Hate Sarah Palin." But the point is, try weird things. If you fail, you're going to get a great new story for your speech.
Oh, wow.
But philanthropy's big, referrals are big, and just being creative pitches, going to clients who I just wound up booking a gig for a restaurant chain that I was trying to get into. I went, took my family there, we took a picture, interviewed their general manager, texted it back to their planner, and they were so impressed that I was able to take the time to go do that they wound up hiring me. So again, these things cost nothing. Video testimonials, I have over 100 on my demo. There's no one right way to do this business, as you know. So just doing weird stuff like that will hopefully help your listeners to grow their businesses.
So be an outlier. Okay, so wrapping it up, we've got work ethic, mental toughness, consistency, and be an outlier. And I really believe that walking your talk is an essential part of this whole game, and you do it brilliantly.
Thank you.
Hey, Ross, I know you don't have anything to sell, but if people want to connect with you, what's the best way? I mean, maybe they want to look up your books and
Yeah,
go out.
I'm not trying to sell. I'm not trying to sell books. When I talk
Well, I
about
mean,
them,
I just think that
no, but honestly, I'm very.
interest.
When I talk about them, it's because that was my previous life. Every speaker on this call had a previous life. Many of them are still in their life that want to get into a new life, but we all did something before we became full-time speakers. So that was my
Yeah.
previous life. I have a website. It's rossbernstein.com, or I'm on LinkedIn. That's it.
Beautiful. Well, Ross, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks, Jane.
Listening, I bet you got some ideas that you were like, "What? That wouldn't even cross my mind." Go to the restaurant of the place that you want to speak for. Hello, brilliant, brilliant. So many great ideas, Ross. Thank you so much for laying down some great juicy ideas for us here today. And with that, we're gonna say, see you soon, wealthy speakers. Bye for now, everyone.